From the moment you were born, you were handed a mask, a name, a role to play in a game you never agreed to join. Before you even had a chance to question, you were told who you are, what this world is, and what your place in it must be. You were taught to obey, to conform, to shrink yourself to fit within the narrow walls of an illusion so deep that even your doubts are part of it. You think you're free because you can choose what to wear, what to eat, where to go, but all of these choices were laid out for you within the boundaries of a script, written long before you took your first breath. Every thought you think, every emotion that stirs within you, every fear that grips your heart has been carefully molded, shaped, and planted by forces you cannot even see. They told you that you are a name, a body, a mind, that you are separate from the world, separate from others, separate from whatever source brought this existence into being. But what if none of that is real? What if the very core of what you think you are is nothing more than a dream within a dream? You were never meant to feel small, yet here you are, crushed under the weight of false identities and impossible expectations. You were never meant to feel broken, and yet you walk through life seeking something to complete you, never realizing that you were whole all along. From the earliest moments, you were taught to believe in separation. Me and you, good and bad, success and failure. But these are walls built of smoke and mirrors, illusions dressed as reality. Have you ever wondered why, in the quiet moments when you are alone with yourself, you feel that longing, that subtle ache, as if something vital is missing? That ache is the memory of your true nature, the part of you that knows you are not what you have been told. You are not just a body made of flesh and bone, not a mind trapped in endless thought. You are something far beyond the labels and forms the world forces on you. You are awareness itself, the silent witness to all that passes, unchanging, infinite, untouched by the illusions swirling around you. But if this is true, why does the illusion seem so solid? Why does life feel so real, so painful, so full of struggle? The answer is both simple and terrifying, because you were conditioned to believe it is. From the day you were born, everything around you reinforced the dream. Parents, teachers, media, society, all of them unknowingly played their part, whispering the same story over and over until it became the only story you knew. They taught you to look outside yourself for answers, for validation, for meaning. They taught you to believe that love comes from others, that success is measured in wealth and status, that happiness is something to be earned rather than something that already lives within you. And so you began the endless chase, running in circles, chasing shadows, never realizing you were running away from yourself. There are moments, though, moments when the cracks in the illusion start to show. When you stand under a vast night sky and feel yourself dissolve into the stars. When you look into the eyes of another and, for a fleeting second, forget that you are separate. When a piece of music moves you so deeply you lose all sense of yourself and become the sound, the vibration, the feeling itself. In those moments, something deep within you stirs, something that remembers. But the mind, terrified of losing control, pulls you back. It tells you it was just a feeling, a fantasy, nothing real. Because the mind knows that if you ever truly see past the illusion, you will be free. And a free being cannot be controlled. And control is what this world is built on. A society that survives by keeping people in fear, chasing false dreams, is a society that needs you to stay asleep. It needs you to believe that you are small, broken, in need of fixing. It needs you to buy, to obey, to follow. But what if you stopped? What if you saw the walls for what they are? Thin veils of illusion that vanish the moment you stop believing in them. What if you realized that all your striving, all your suffering, all your searching for meaning outside yourself was never necessary? Because the truth is, you were never lost. You were never broken. You were never incomplete. You only believed you were. The mind will fight this realization. It will scream that it's nonsense, that of course you are real, that of course you are your name, your story, your past. But who are you when all of that is stripped away? Who are you without your name, your job, your relationships, your memories? If all of that disappeared, would you still be? And if you would, then who is that you who remains? This is what the great mystics and sages throughout time have pointed to, using different words, but always the same truth. You are not who you think you are. You are the one who sees, the one who is aware, the silent observer of all passing forms. And that awareness is not separate from anything. It is the very ground of existence itself. But if realizing this is so simple, why do so few ever wake up? Because knowing the truth and living the truth are two different things. It is one thing to glimpse beyond the veil in a moment of clarity. It is another to live every day from that knowing. The mind resists, the body clings to old habits. Fear rises up like a storm to pull you back into the dream. Fear of losing your identity, of stepping into the unknown, of facing life without the crutches of illusion. But what are you really afraid of losing? The mask, the story, the dream. And if none of that was ever real, what is there to fear? The truth is, freedom is terrifying. Because freedom means no more excuses. No more blaming the world. No more hiding behind a false self. Freedom means facing life as it is, raw and unfiltered. But it also means finally coming home to yourself. It means moving through the world without fear, without need, without the endless hunger that drives most people to chase illusions until the day they die. It means living in harmony with the flow of existence, moving effortlessly, without struggle, because you are no longer resisting what is. You are no longer a wave fighting against the ocean. You have remembered that you are the ocean itself. And when you live from this place, something miraculous happens. The world that once seemed so heavy, so frightening, so overwhelming begins to shift. You see beauty where before you saw only struggle. You see connection where before you saw separation. You move through life with a quiet power, untouched by the chaos around you. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you are no longer at war with it. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. You no longer need to be anyone. You are free simply to be, but this freedom is not given. It is not something someone else can hand you. It is something you must claim for yourself. It means facing every lie you've been told, every belief you've held about who you are, and letting it all fall away. It means standing in the fire of truth and allowing everything false to burn. It means surrendering everything you think you are so that what you truly are can finally be seen. And though it may feel like a death, it is the beginning of real life. The life you were meant to live before the world told you who you had to be. So the question is not whether this truth exists. The question is whether you are ready to see it. Whether you are ready to stop playing the game, to stop wearing the mask, to stop chasing things that were never meant for you. Whether you are ready to remember what you've always been, long before anyone told you otherwise. Because once you remember, there is no going back. Once you see through the illusion, it can never hold you again. And though the path may be difficult, though it may demand everything from you, it will give you something far greater in return. Yourself. You have waited long enough. The truth has waited long enough. And now, the only thing left is for you to see it, to claim it, to live it. Because nothing else will ever satisfy you. Nothing else ever could. You have always known this, haven't you? Somewhere deep within you, there's been a quiet voice whispering that something isn't quite right with the world you've been handed. But every time that voice spoke, the noise of the mind, the weight of the world, the demands of life would drown it out. You told yourself you were imagining things. You told yourself that everyone else seems to be fine, following the same rules, playing the same game, so maybe you should too. But no matter how much you tried to silence that voice, it never left you. It was the part of you that knew, beyond words, beyond thought, that there's more to this life than just survival, than just fitting in, than just playing a role that was written for you. That voice was your truth, waiting for you to remember. Yet it's easier to ignore that truth, isn't it? Easier to stay in the familiar pain than to step into the terrifying unknown. The world around you keeps feeding you distractions. Screens filled with endless entertainment, work that drains you. Relationships that are based on masks and performances, not real connection. You've been taught to numb yourself, to keep yourself busy, to never stop long enough to hear that inner voice speak. Because if you do stop, if you do listen, everything might change. And change is what you've been trained to fear most. They told you to fear failure, fear judgment, fear rejection, fear not being good enough. But the truth is, what they really wanted was for you to fear yourself. Because if you ever stopped being afraid at who you truly are, if you ever realized how powerful you've always been, they would lose all control over you. Think about that for a moment. Every system in this world, governments, religions, corporations, they all thrive on your belief that you are small, powerless, broken, in need of fixing or saving. They sell you solutions to problems they created. They feed you fears and then offer themselves as the cure. But what happens if you realize there is nothing to fix? What happens if you remember that you were never broken? You become something that cannot be controlled, cannot be manipulated, cannot be bought or sold. You become free, and freedom is dangerous to a world built on chains. But here's the secret: the chains were never real. The prison you think you are in is made of thoughts, of beliefs, of illusions. And the door has always been open. You were taught to believe that life is a struggle, that you have to fight to survive, that happiness is something you must chase, but that's not true. You were meant to move through life like a river, flowing effortlessly toward your purpose. You were meant to live in harmony with the current of existence, not to fight against it. And that current is still inside you, waiting for you to remember how to flow. But how do you find it again? How do you return to what you've always been? First, by stopping. Stop running from yourself. Stop chasing things that don't fulfill you. Stop listening to the lies that say you are not enough. Just stop. Be silent. And in that silence, listen. Not to the mind, not to the fears, but to the deeper knowing that has always been there, waiting. You don't need to add anything to yourself to find the truth. You don't need to become better, smarter, richer, or more spiritual. You need to remove everything that is not you. Every false belief, every false identity, every story that was forced upon you. When all of that falls away, what remains is what has always been. Your true self, vast, limitless, free. But let me warn you, this isn't easy. The mind will resist. It will tell you that you need those stories, those identities. It will tell you that without them, you are nothing. And in a way, it's right. You will be nothing. But not in the way you fear. Not an emptiness, not a void, but the pure, open space where everything real can finally exist. The nothing that holds everything, the silent awareness that is beyond all forms. You have glimpsed this before, in moments of pure presence, watching a sunset, holding a loved one, feeling awe in the face of beauty. In those moments, the mind stopped, and you were simply present. And for a moment, you felt whole. You felt at peace. But then the mind returned, dragging you back into the dream, into the struggle. What if you didn't let it pull you back this time? What if you chose to stay in that presence, to live from that place of awareness? You would see life differently. You would see that the fears you've carried for so long were just shadows with no substance. You would see that all the chasing, all the striving, all the pretending was never necessary. And you would begin to move through life with a quiet confidence, knowing that you need nothing outside yourself to be complete. You would no longer seek love. You would realize you are love. You would no longer seek peace. You would see that peace is your natural state when the noise of the mind fades. You would no longer seek freedom. You would see that you were always free. But here's the thing most people don't understand. This isn't about escaping life. It's about finally living it, fully, deeply, honestly. Without the masks, without the lies, without the fear. It's about seeing beauty in everything, even in pain. Because when you are no longer resisting life, you can see its perfection, even in its challenges. You realize that everything you go through is part of the unfolding of the whole, and you are not separate from that whole. You are life itself, experiencing itself through you. But the illusion is seductive. It will try to pull you back. The world will try to remind you of who you are supposed to be. People will try to fit you back into the box they are comfortable with. But once you've seen through it, you cannot fully go back. Even if you try, something inside you will always remember, and that memory will call to you again and again until you answer. So the choice becomes clear: will you keep pretending, keep playing a role in a story that was never yours? Or will you step into the unknown and finally be what you've always been? Understand this: when you stop identifying with the mind, a new way of being opens up. You begin to move through the world not from fear, but from love. Not from need, but from fullness. You stop seeking validation because you know your worth is not dependent on what anyone else thinks. You stop fearing failure because you see that there is nothing to lose and nothing to gain. You stop running from pain because you see that pain is just a passing cloud, not something that can define you. You start to live, really live, with your eyes open and your heart open, no longer hiding from life but embracing it fully. But let me be clear, this takes courage. It takes a willingness to let go of everything false. It takes the bravery to stand alone if needed, to be misunderstood, to be judged by those still trapped in the dream. But what you gain is worth far more than what you lose. You gain yourself, you gain freedom. You gain life in its raw, unfiltered beauty. And in that freedom, you find a peace that nothing in this world can give you and nothing can take away. So here you are, standing at the edge of a great truth. You can look away, pretend you never saw it, or you can step forward and claim what has always been yours. The choice is yours. No one can make it for you. But if you choose to step into truth, if you choose to live from awareness rather than illusion, everything will change. Not because life itself changes, but because you will see it as it truly is. And in that seeing, you will finally be free. There comes a moment when you realize that all the chasing, all the striving, all the endless effort to become something or someone has never brought you closer to what you seek. You realize that no matter how much you achieve, no matter how much you gather, no matter how much you change yourself to fit into the mold, that feeling of emptiness still lingers somewhere deep inside. It's as if you are running on a treadmill that goes nowhere, exhausting yourself, yet always ending up in the same place. But what if the problem was never that you weren't running fast enough? What if the problem was that you were running in the wrong direction all along? You see, life was never meant to be a race. You were not meant to measure your worth by how much you have or how many people approve of you. You were not meant to spend your days trying to prove to the world and to yourself that you are worthy of love, worthy of happiness, worthy of existence. Because you were always worthy. You always had everything you needed within you. But no one told you that. Instead, they told you that you needed to earn it, to work for it, to struggle for it. They made you believe that worth is something outside of you, something that comes from success, from status, from validation. And so, you began to chase shadows, forgetting what you were seeking was never outside you in the first place. And now, here you are, holding pieces of a puzzle that don't quite fit. You've done everything they said would make you happy. And yet the happiness you were promised never arrived in the way you hoped. You've worn the masks they told you to wear, played the roles they told you to play, and yet, behind the mask, you know there is something more. You feel it, like a soft echo inside your heart, a quiet knowing that refuses to be silenced. That knowing is the truth of who you are, buried beneath years of conditioning, beneath layers of fear, beneath everything you were told to believe about yourself and the world. But to uncover that truth, you have to be willing to let go of the lies. And that is not easy, because those lies have become familiar. They have become comfortable, even when they cause you pain. The mind clings to them because it is afraid of what will be left if they are gone. The mind is afraid of the unknown. It is afraid of losing control. But you are not the mind. You are not the fear. You are the awareness that sees all of this happening. You are the quiet space in which all thoughts, all fears, all illusions appear and disappear. And that space cannot be harmed, cannot be diminished, cannot be controlled. It is free. You are free. But only if you are willing to see it. Imagine a bird that has lived its whole life in a cage. The door to the cage has always been open. But the bird has never dared to fly out because it believes the cage is all there is. It has forgotten that it has wings. It has forgotten that it was meant to soar. You are like that bird. The cage is the illusion of who you think you are. Your name, your story, your past, your fears. And the open door is the truth of your being. Freedom is right there, waiting, but you have to be willing to step through that door. You have to remember that you have wings. You have to remember that you were never meant to live in a cage of limitation and fear. But stepping out of that cage means facing the unknown. It means letting go of everything that feels safe, even if that safety is an illusion. It means standing naked in front of life, with no mask to hide behind, no story to protect you. It means facing every fear you've ever had about not being enough, not being worthy, not being loved. And when you face those fears, when you walk through them instead of running away, you realize they were never real. They were just shadows on the wall of the mind, projected by years of conditioning. They have no substance, no power, except the power you give them. And when you stop giving them power, they fade. What remains is you, raw, real, free. And in that freedom, something incredible happens. You stop needing to be anything other than what you are. You stop needing to prove yourself, to justify your existence. You stop measuring your worth by the standards of a world lost in its own illusions. You begin to live from a place of deep peace, because you know that you are already whole. You begin to love without fear, because you know that love is what you are, not something you need to get from others. You begin to create, to move, to speak, to act from a place of authenticity, not from a place of fear or need. Life becomes simpler, but also deeper, richer, more meaningful. But none of this can happen until you are willing to let go of the false self. The false self is everything you think you need to be to survive in this world. It is the collection of masks and roles that you wear to gain approval, to avoid rejection, to feel safe. But it is also the source of all your suffering, because as long as you live as that false self, you are always at war with yourself. You are always trying to be something you are not, always trying to live up to expectations that were never yours to begin with. And that war is exhausting. It drains your life of joy, of peace, of meaning. But when you let it go, when you drop the mask and step into the truth of who you are, the war ends. You come home to yourself. And there is nothing in this world more powerful than that. Because when you are no longer trapped in the illusion of being separate, of being small, of being broken, you realize that you are part of something vast, something infinite. You realize that the same awareness that looks through your eyes is looking through the eyes of everyone you meet. You realize that there is no separation, no division. There is only one life, one consciousness, expressing itself in infinite forms. And when you live from that knowing, everything changes. You treat others with kindness, not because you are supposed to, but because you see yourself in them. You face challenges with courage, not because you have to prove anything, but because you know that nothing real can be threatened. You move through life with grace, with presence, with love, because you know that life itself is an expression of love. So now the question is, are you ready to remember? Are you ready to let go of who you think you are, so you can finally be who you truly are? Are you ready to stop chasing what was never lost and come home to yourself? The door is open. It has always been open. All you have to do is walk through. Everything you've ever searched for has been waiting within you all along. The love, the peace, the freedom, the meaning. None of it was ever out there, and none of it was ever missing. It's only been covered by layers of fear, by stories you were told, by beliefs that were never yours. And now, as you stand on the edge of this truth, you can feel it, can't you? That quiet pull, that deep knowing, telling you that you are more than a name, more than a story, more than a body moving through time. You are life itself, aware of itself. You are the stillness behind every thought, the silence behind every word, the space in which all things appear and disappear. And in that space, there is no fear, no lack, no struggle. Only the fullness of what you've always been. You don't have to fight for it. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to wait for someone to give it to you. You only have to stop running from it. Stop chasing shadows. Stop trying to be something you're not. And just be here, fully, deeply, honestly. Let everything false fall away. Let the mind's noise fade into the background. Let the fear pass like a cloud in the sky. And what will remain is you, the real you, the you that was never touched by the lies of the world. The you that is whole, complete, and free. So take a breath, right now. Feel it move through you. That breath is life, and you are life. There's nothing more to seek. There's nowhere else to go. You've already arrived. You've always been home.